we're going to talk about dividing polynomials, but we're going to review 6th grade, 5th grade long division before we do that. So we are going to apply the steps of long division in order for us to be able to divide polynomials, okay? So things to remember, 1984, this is your numerator. But it is also known as the dividend. The dividend. Dividend. And then the 16 in this fraction, this is of course our denominator. But it is also known as the divisor. Okay, so I wanted you to solve this problem, see what you remember how to do. So in elementary-ish, you learned, right? You got 16, and you're not looking at all of these numbers at once, right? We're just used to 16 go into 1? No. So depending on your teacher, because we all had different teachers, I was taught to put an X there. Some of you were taught to put a 0. Some of you were taught just skip the space, right? So then we're going to go to the next number. Does 16 go into 19? Yes. How many? Once. Very nice. Then we said, okay, I got to multiply. 1 times 16 is 16. And then we do what? We subtract. We get and bring down the 8. And then we do it all over again. Now we're doing 16 into 38 is 2, multiply, subtract, bring down the number, do it over again. 4, multiply, subtract, we get done. Okay, so this, we're finished. There's no remainder. This is called our quotient. Okay, and we could even go through and we could check our work. Okay, you should have learned this way back when. You could, if you do 124 times 16, it should give you 1984 so that you can check your work. Explain how you can check your solution. You can always check your solution by multiplying your quotient, which is your answer, by your divisor or your denominator. Okay? And that is going to give you your dividend or your numerator, okay? And that is something we're going to look at doing. When we talk about the steps to make this happen, I want you to think about what we just did. What did we do with the dividend for the first term? We divided, right? We're going to take always, we're looking at that first term. So we looked at the 1, then we looked at the 19, and we divided it by the 16. Okay, then we had to multiply that number we put in our quotient by our divisor, and then we wrote it and we subtracted. And then we did that all over again. And then we can put repeat as needed. Now, I do want you to make a little note that essentially when we put subtract, all we're really doing is we're going to change the sign. Now, when we were in elementary school, it was all positive numbers. So when we put subtract, it became a negative. Okay? So if we look at this one and we're following those steps, we're going to divide these first two terms. Well, essentially you're saying, what times x is x squared? X. I'm actually going to put it here because it's over the x. Then, just like we did with our numbers and our quotient, right, we're going to multiply this. Well, what's x times x squared? X times x, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. X times x is x squared. We've multiplied, and then it says subtract, which is essentially changing that sign. It was a positive x squared. We're going to subtract it. We're going to bring down our 4x. And now we're going to start that process all over again. So now we're saying, what times x is 4x? What kind of 4? A positive 4, and we're going to multiply. 4 times x is 4x. We're going to subtract it or change the sign, and we get 0. So my quotient, or my answer, is x plus 4. We could check it. We could say x times x plus 4. And when we distribute, we do get x squared plus 4x. So it works. Okay? I will show you how to check that in the computer on Desmos tomorrow. Let's practice. We're just going to do number 2. So we're going to practice first. We got to set it up. The denominator goes outside. And the numerator is going to go inside. So when you do this, you need to really focus on how many are going to go into. So we have 5x times something equals this 5x to the third. Well, we've got the same numbers. Technically, we are dividing like we did in the last unit. So if you really wanted to look at it like this, with your exponent rules, 5 divided by 5 is 1. What's x to the third divided by x to the first? X squared. So that means that x squared, this should be a 2. X squared times 5x is 5x to the third. Now, if you don't want to set it up with that division, that's fine. If you're able to look at, okay, I need 5x to the third and I have 5x. I need x squared more. That's fine. I just want you to see mathematically why that's working. So we divided and then we said, okay, now we need to subtract, or I'm sorry, multiply. So 5x times x squared is 5x to the third. We're going to subtract. So now we're going to bring down what we have. This is 0, so we don't need to write anything. What times 5x is 25x squared? What kind of 5x? Positive 5x. Make sure you have a sign. And now we're going to multiply that. 5x times 5x is 25x squared. Subtract. Bring down the negative 10. Now, can we do... Oh, I didn't write the x. Negative 10x. Don't forget the letters. We talked about that. 5x times what is negative 10x? Negative 2. You do your multiplying. Now, this is where we talked about subtracting really is just changing the sign. Because if you minus a minus, it's a plus. So our answer is x squared plus 5x minus 2. So looking at number 4, notice now our denominator is a binomial. We have 2 things. So when we do that multiplying piece, we have to make sure that we distribute to both. So let's see what this looks like. Set it up first. X plus 5 into... No, you cannot add the 5 and the x because they are not like terms. Good question. So we're going to set it up. And again, remember, we're only worried about these leading terms. We're not actually worried about that 5. We're worried about the x and the x squared. So what times x gives me x squared? Just x, okay? So we're going to put that here. You could put a 1 if you wanted. So we've divided. Our next step said to multiply. So we're going to multiply x times x is x squared. But you also have to do x times 5 because that's still part of that, what we're dividing by. So this is a positive 5x. Okay, so we've divided, we've multiplied. The next step said subtract, which we really said is just changing the sign. So this becomes a negative x squared. What does this 5x become? It becomes a negative. You always want that first term to cancel. So I have 2x minus 5x. Please be careful with your signs. What do we get? Negative 3x, and we're going to bring down the negative 15. So now our first term is x and negative 3x. So how many x's are in negative 3x? Minus 3, right? We're going to have to multiply that. So we're saying multiply negative 3 times x is negative 3x. But I also do have to do my negative 3 times positive 5 is a negative 15. So we've divided, we've multiplied. Last step is subtract or change the sign. So these are negatives, they're going to become positives. They happen to both cancel. We do not have a remainder. So my quotient, my answer is x minus 3. Start by setting up 2x minus 1, 6x squared. You could put 1x if you wanted, or just x, minus 2. Start with your leading terms. So what times 2x gives me 6x squared? Well, what times 2 is 6? 3. What times x is x squared? X. Okay? So you can break it into pieces, or you can divide like we talked about that we did in the last unit. So make sure you're multiplying. So I have 3x times 2x is that 6x squared we wanted. But I also have to do the 3x times the negative 1 is a negative 3x. We've divided, we've multiplied, subtract. So we're just changing that sign. So this 6x squared becomes negative. This negative 3x becomes a positive. What's 1x and 3x? 4 what? 4x. Bring down your negative 2. So now your first terms are 2x and 4x. Well, what times 2x is 4x? 2. What kind of 2? Positive. You got to have a sign connecting those. So we're going to do 2 times 2x is 4x. But you also have to do 2 times a negative 1 is a negative 2. Don't forget, subtract, change your signs. We have no remainder. So what this means is if I did 2x minus 1 times 3x plus 2, I should get 6x squared plus x minus 2. Look right here. What is important to remember when the divisor is a binomial? What do we have to remember? You have to make sure you multiply by both parts of the binomial. So the numbers and the letters. Okay? We're not going to do all of this next piece. We'll just choose a couple, but they are done for you on the calendar. These are a little bit special. When they don't divide evenly, we are going to have a remainder. So we need to look and see exactly what that looks like when we write it, okay? So let's look at 7 because it's pretty straightforward, and then we'll get a little bit bigger, okay? So 5x into 10x plus 3. So start with your leading terms. What times 5x is 10x? Positive 2. So we're going to 2 times 10x, or 2 times 5x is 10x. Change the sign. Bring down the 3. But I don't have anything else to divide. 5x doesn't go into 3. So this is our remainder. So in 5th grade you were taught you could write 2R3, right? 2 remainder 3. And then in 6th grade you were taught, okay, well I need to add a decimal and a 0. Okay, that's not going to really work for us here. So when we have a remainder with a polynomial, our answer is 2. And then we're going to write plus our remainder, which is 3, over our divisor. Over our divisor. Number 9. So I have x squared minus x into x to the third plus 7x squared minus 4x minus 8. So we're going to have to start with our leading terms. So we have x squared into x to the third. Well, what times x squared is x to the third? X. I'm going to write it way over here where my x is. You don't have to do that. That's just how I was taught. And we got to multiply, right? So x squared times x is x to the third. What about x times a negative x? Be careful with your signs.
Negative x squared.
Negative 1x squared. So we've divided. We've multiplied. What's the next step? Subtract or change the signs, right? So this becomes a negative and this becomes a positive. So what is 7x squared plus 1x squared?
8x squared.
Okay, bring down the negative 4x. So now we're doing x squared into 8x squared. Well, what times x squared is 8x squared? 8. What kind of 8? Positive. Make sure you have a sign to connect them. So 8 times x squared is 8x squared. What's 8 times negative x? Negative 8x. Change your signs. What's negative 4x plus 8x? Positive 4x. But I can't divide anymore. There's nothing times x squared that will just give me 4x. So this is my remainder. So when we write it, x plus 8 plus 4x over, what did we divide by? X squared minus x. And you can actually check this in Desmos the exact same way. We did forget to bring down this negative 8. Thank you. So our remainder is 4x minus 8. I apologize. Thank you. I missed that. Over x squared minus x. And you can still take that times x squared minus x. We'll do that in Desmos to get that x to the third.